Thor Ragnarok is directed by Taika Waititi, who had a role in the beloved Green Lantern movie.
And this movie stars Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Kate Blanchett, and Mark Ruffalo. This movie is also the fifth time, or sixth time if you include Thor's cameo in Doctor Strange, but this is his sixth appearance in the MCU movies. This is also the 17th MCU film. And we are back with Thor, the God of Thunder. And we see him imprisoned, and after he escapes his imprisonment, he finds out that Hela, the goddess of death, is planning on destroying Asgard and all of its inhabitants. So Thor must band together with the Hulk and Valkyrie in order to stop her.
Alright, so guys, I want to start off by saying that the first hour of this movie is just pure horse manure. If you go into this movie with your brain turned off, and if you enjoy mindless jokes, then you'll probably enjoy the beginning hour of this movie. But once it gets past that part, then it starts to pick up and actually becomes an actually pretty decent movie.
Yeah, and just so you know, I would want to start off with the good points, because I actually did like quite a bit of this movie after the first hour. So all the good points we will be bringing up will be after the first hour. Now the first thing I want to bring up is Kate Blanchett as Hela. I felt like her acting was actually very good for this character. I also like the character. All of her scenes, I'm going to say, I know I've already said I'm not going to bring up the first part right now, but it does kind of turn into a bad thing. But even like in the beginning, Hela's scenes were actually really good. They were probably the most darkest tone of the movie, and they actually really worked for the film.
Hela, for me at least, was definitely the best part about this movie. In every scene, I don't think there was a single scene that I didn't like that she was in.
Now this movie is also like really fun to look at, because it's a very visually appealing movie. The CGI is really good. Probably some of the best in the MCU. I would say, especially for the Hulk. The Hulk looked actually really real. Like in a lot of the movies, especially like Age of Ultron, whenever like Scarlett Johansson's like touching the Hulk's hand or something like that, it kind of looks really fake. But in this movie, all the CGI is actually very well done.
And not only just the CGI, but the costume design and the makeup and everything, just everything in this movie visually looked amazing.
Another issue that I usually have with Marvel movies is that there's a lot of comedy. Now in this movie, it did have its like share of the comedy, and it kind of had too much. But after that first hour, the comedy actually becomes more natural. There's actually some parts that I laugh like really hard at, because the comedy becomes more of something that seems to be more like ingrained into the story, and it makes a lot more sense with the movie.
Yeah, we keep mentioning the hour mark, and it's because we actually, whenever we felt that the movie actually started picking up and started becoming pretty good, we actually looked at our phone and noticed that it was about an hour into the movie. And it's also whenever Idris Elba makes his first appearance in this movie as Heimdall. That's I'm not going to say that Idris Elba saved this movie, but he kind of sort of did, because once his character came onto the screen, just the movie seemed to flow a lot more. And the last 20 minutes of this movie, I actually really liked. I even borderline loved.
And also one other thing about the last 20 minutes, is that the fight scene, and you know, all of these superhero movies have like this big fight scene at the end of the movie, but I really love the fight scene at the very end of Thor.
Now that we're done with the happy stuff, let's just get on to the crap part of this movie. The first hour, as we mentioned, was just pure crap. It honestly felt like a parody movie, like a scary movie or a superhero movie. And it really was some of the most cringy comedy that the MCU has had. And literally at one point they had one of the Asgardians using a shake weight.
Yeah, and to add on to the jokes and stuff like that. Like I said earlier, later on in the movie the jokes become very natural and they kind of just really fit. But before that, in the first hour, the jokes it just seems like everything in the first part of the movie is a setup for a joke. None of it seems to actually come off naturally. It all just seems like they just try to push like a character on us, or they gave this character a weird voice, or just something happened, and everything was just pushed under the fact of setting up a joke instead of having the jokes actually feel like they were supposed to be there, or something that could actually happen. And like we said earlier, we loved pretty much all the scenes with Hela, but even though I loved them in the very beginning, because of the tone changes between the scenes with Hela, the scenes without Hela, because it was just so lighthearted without her and so like dark with her. The tones just went all over the place and they just got really distracting after a while.
Yeah, and it honestly felt like two separate movies, with the Thor and Loki story being a true comedy movie, and then the scenes with Gila just being more of a serious, gritty movie.
And a very terrible thing about the very beginning was the editing was just awful. There was a lot of times whenever I didn't really understand why they were doing things or like how things were happening because of how terrible the editing was. It was just kind of just very strange and awkward feeling.
Yeah, the beginning was very jumbled. I'm not going to say it was necessarily fast-paced. It's that it was just like one scene after another. It didn't feel like it flowed very well. It felt very weak. And then when they introduced Hulk into this movie, they tried to go with the Planet Hulk storyline, and it felt sort of shoehorned into it. Because I feel like since the Universal Studios actually owns the rights to the Hulk solo movies, they felt like they had to add that, which is a pretty famous storyline, the Planet Hulk storyline. So they felt like they had to add it into this movie so that they had control over it. And it just didn't feel like it mixed well with the overall story, with the Ragnarok and the Armageddon and the fall of Asgard. And even worse, as much as I liked Gila in this movie, I felt like they focused too much on this Hulk storyline, that they sort of underdeveloped Gila's character.
There was actually a lot of things that were shoehorned into this movie, including a little cameo from another MCU hero. And I don't want to say who it is just in case you don't know, but there could have been a better way to have this hero in the movie. I'm not saying they should have just cut it out completely, but they could have just had a better way of having this superhero in there. It felt awkward for the time being, and it's not like I didn't like this scene. It's probably one of the better scenes of the beginning, but it just felt awkward. It felt like they could have just made it a lot smoother. And even though I love some of the acting from Cate Blanchett and Idris Elba, all the other acting was at best decent. The worst actor I felt like in this movie is probably Mark Ruffalo. And I like him in all the other movies, but I felt like in this movie he felt like surprised about something the entire movie until up to a certain point right before the big fight.
And like Marquez said, there's a lot of things in this movie that are just there to set up a joke, and Taika Waititi's voice was just there to be a joke, and it just didn't fit the movie at all.
And one of the last points I want to bring up about this movie that is very bad was the soundtrack. It was very disappointing. In fact, a lot of times it kind of took me out of the movie because a lot of times the music was either just not good or it just was like just nothing original, nothing spectacular about it. Well guys, it was hard for me to figure out a grade for this movie considering how drastic of a sudden change it had between the first hour and afterwards. It almost felt like there was a different director in between the two parts, and I almost felt like walking out of the movie. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Thor Ragnarok is 45% awesome.
Yeah, pretty much the first half of this movie was so jumbled, and the comedy was just super cringy. And then the second half actually turned into a pretty decent movie. And I counted at least 3 jokes that I laughed pretty hard at. So I'm going to say that Thor Ragnarok is 50% awesome.
Well guys, don't forget to like and share. Also comment below and let us know what you thought about this movie. Also, if you can, go ahead and rank all 3 Thor films for us.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2AwesomeMen.
Also, if you're interested, go ahead and click right here to subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.